Another year, another WWE 2K. Has anyone ever fantasized about what the absolute perfect wrestling game would be like? What's up guys, Acer Thorn here, and welcome to my 4-part mini-series on wrestling games. For the next 4 weeks, I will discuss my vision for the perfect wrestling game, and before anyone posts a comment, no, WWF No Mercy is not the perfect wrestling game. For full details, see my 14-part Let's Play on that game, link in the description if you're interested. I welcome all of you to put your ideas in the comments as well. By all means, feel free to disagree with me. I welcome audience engagement, as long as we keep it civil. Some of the things I talk about will almost certainly be controversial, and I welcome you to post your comments and explain why you believe my vision is misplaced. After all, as the old adage goes, you can't please everyone, and there's no accounting for taste. So with that out of the way, I think the first order of business, before we discuss anything story or gameplay related, we need to establish I would like to first establish a few rules of thumb for my vision for the perfect wrestling game. I will make frequent callbacks to these rules during this 4-part series, so it is best if you learn them now. Rule of thumb number 1. Maximize player customizability. One of the biggest draws of nearly any wrestling game from the mid-1990s to the present is the amount of customization options at the player's disposal. The options of being able to create custom anything is almost always met with universal praise. Even if your options are extremely limited, you still can't go wrong with more customization. Let me put it this way. This is a clip from Chris Denker's channel as he reacted to the WWE 2K19 gameplay trailer earlier this year. Notice this reaction right here.
That's not a custom briefcases. Custom briefcases.
Briefcases. Just the ability to create custom briefcases. And this guy is practically coming in his pants. Long story short, when it comes to giving the player more freedom for customization, there is no such thing as too much of a good thing. Less is not more when it comes to customization. More is more. Rule of thumb number 2. Minimize player restrictions. This rule is essentially the opposite of rule of thumb number 1, and they do blur together in a lot of areas, but I still feel the need to address it in a separate rule since it does merit its own discussion in some respects. This is an instance where less really is more. Now let me give you a few examples of restrictions that wrestling games have traditionally had that they don't really need. In the create a video mode, why are we limited to 30 seconds for each video we create? Why do we not have the option to add in our own sound effects? Why can't we show men and women interacting with each other? Now obviously we don't want male-on-female violence in these games, and I accept that restriction. But there are video clips we have in Create a Video that don't show the people interacting violently. Why can't those clips allow for intergender interactions? So long story short, if a restriction isn't absolutely necessary to keep the game balanced or prevent helicopter parents from crying to Congress calling for federal regulation of video games, then don't have the restriction in there. Rule of thumb number 3. Never remove, only improve. This is a meme that has been going around the wrestling video game community for a while now, and I couldn't agree more. Think about it this way, is there honestly any reason to take entire modes out of new installments? It's not even like you'd have to reprogram the mode from the ground up. If you want to save money, you could just copy and paste the code from previous games into newer installments and just let us play those modes. While I would prefer if you actually made improvements and tweaks to the modes from year to year, simply giving us verbatim the same modes as before is still better than nixing those modes altogether. Back in the day, you had an excuse for why you had to remove modes altogether, because you only had a limited amount of disk space to use to give us content for the game. There was no downloadable content. The entire game had to fit on a single disk, and that disk was limited to only 4 gigabytes of data. However, those days are gone. Now you install your games onto the console's hard drive. When this first happened, people reacted with a bit of backlash, but we have since gotten used to it. However, this change in the way the games were distributed effectively eliminated the disk space limitations. Now you can have your games on as many disks as you need, while the player only needs disk 1 in the system in order to actually play the game post-installation. This is a tactic that PC games have been using for years, and it effectively eliminates the file size limitations of yesteryear. So no longer do you have the excuse that you have a limited file size to work with, so stop making excuses and hashtag never remove, only improve. So now that we've gotten our 3 rules of thumb out of the way, I would now like to talk about some of the things that the newer wrestling games have done well. This entire series will contain quite a lot of negativity at 2K for its lacking game design, so I want to preface that with some positivity before I get to the waves and waves of negativity. I especially like the ability to create custom arenas and shows. I've always fantasized about owning my own indie wrestling promotion, and while I don't have the money to do that, and it looks as if I never will, the newer games allow me to live that dream vicariously by creating arenas and championship belts for my little imaginary Fed, instead of just using CAW wrestlers inside WWE arenas and pretending like those arenas are custom ones. I like the way you have made it so that pin combos and diving pin combos are not inherently part of the moves, but rather are optional segments of the moves you can trigger with a button press at the right moment during a move's animation. In past games, moves like the jackhammer or the moonsault have always automatically resulted in a pin attempt, and if you weren't ready to pin your opponent, you had to avoid using the moves until you had damaged them enough to win, lest you risk giving them the extra momentum from a kick-out. With pin combo and diving pin combo both being optional portions of various moves, that conundrum doesn't exist. I also enjoy the feature, added in WWE 2K16, of having only a limited number of reversals that must recharge over time. IGN's review of WWE 2K16 takes the words right out of my mouth, so I'll go ahead and just quote them directly. Managing it correctly means you've got the ace in the hole you need to escape scary late match situations, where a less frugal opponent might find themselves forced to absorb a beating. Not only does this create a welcome layer of decision-making previously absent from the series, it adds an extremely meaningful differentiation between characters, as some have more reversal stocks than others. Last but not least, I definitely enjoy your implementation of the modifier button. For most of 2K's run with the franchise, the modifier button was used almost exclusively for OMG moments, and while it hasn't lost that function, as of WWE 2K18, it is used for so much more. If you've seen my videos about Ideal Elder Scrolls 6, you know how much I love the modifier button, and I hope that one day it can become a staple of video games generally, just like how the start button is the default button to use to pause the game. These are all things that should be kept in future wrestling games. Remember rule of thumb number 3, if it's not broke, don't break it. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, what do you say we start talking about some actual in-game features? The first feature I want to request is the one feature, more than anything else, would effectively eliminate the need for everything else I will talk about all this month. I am a huge fan of Bethesda RPGs, in case you're new to my channel. If you're not new to my channel and haven't figured that out yet, then I feel sorry for you. Anyway, the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games are famous for Bethesda not only allowing their games to be modded, but for Bethesda actively supporting the modding community themselves. They do this by releasing their creation kits and construction sets for download free of charge off their websites. They were the tools used by Bethesda during these games' development to actually put the games together, and it significantly cuts back the learning curve to actually make content for the game. I cannot stress this enough. Just give us full mod support, and you literally do not have to give us anything else. I would like to play a segment from a 5-hour-long video uploaded by a YouTuber named Will Loves Video Games that succinctly demonstrates the power of a construction set or creation kit when it comes to people being able to create their own content for the games.
The success of the Elder Scrolls modding scene can no doubt be attributed to the Elder Scrolls Construction Set. The Construction Set is the same tool Bethesda used during development to put the game together, and you can load up all of Oblivion and create and modify parts of the game without any coding experience. It was approachable enough for 12-year-old me to create an NPC and a weapon that did 10 million points of damage and add them to the game. It took me all day, and I watched lots of tutorials, but I was nonetheless able to create something without any coding experience or significant understanding of the game's logic. And that accessibility and efficiency of the construction set could explain why Bethesda is able to make such massive games with so few team members. A 12-year-old with no understanding of games development was able to add an NPC into the game over the course of a day, so you can only imagine the output that an experienced designer could be capable of. It could be that many other developers use tools similar to the construction set when making their games, but I bet that even if they did, those tools wouldn't be as accessible as the construction set.
A single day, as opposed to the 4 years one normally spends at a university learning how to do computer programming by conventional means. And I can't stress this enough. Give us active mod support, and you literally don't have to do anything else for the game. For some of you who aren't familiar with Bethesda's RPGs, that sounds far-fetched and even delusional. But if you know the power of mods, you know that my statement that mods are so powerful is not only accurate, but an understatement. To show you what I mean, let me provide you with another segment from Will Loves Video Games' 5-hour-long video on the Elder Scrolls.
Even if the PC version required a blood sacrifice every month, you would still have an incredibly compelling reason to play it on PC. That reason, of course, being mods. If you've made it this far into this video, then you're a nerd, so I don't need to explain what exactly a mod is, but it's difficult to overstate how beneficial they can be. If you dedicated a day or two to modding, you could potentially address just about every issue that I've identified and will go on to identify with Oblivion, and you can end up with a game that's a whole magnitude better than it originally was. It's possible to play Oblivion for hundreds of hours, mod the hell out of it, and then pick it up again to find an entirely fresh and improved experience, year after year, because the modding scene has thrived for Oblivion's entire lifespan.
Mods can provide extra customization options where vanilla options are sorely lacking. They can fix bugs in the game that the developers haven't patched up. They can streamline game mechanics that were previously clunky and clustered. They can remove limitations that the vanilla game has for no reason, and they can put things in newer games that were in previous installments but were taken out. Here, let me give you just a tiny example of the power that mods bring. On the forums smacktalks.org, there is a mod simply known as Game Title Plus for each of the WWE 2K installments, WWE 2K17 Plus, WWE 2K18 Plus, and so on and so forth. This mod's match editor alone is a testament to the power that mods have to give the players anything they want. In WWE 2K17, I was pretty salty about the fact that there was no option for a tag team ladder match. But with WWE 2K17 Plus, I can simply start with a fatal 4-way ladder match, pause the game, use the Plus mod to assign them to 2 teams of 2 rather than 4 teams of 1, and presto changeo, we suddenly have a tag team ladder match. The Plus mod can even be used to create entire matchups not otherwise possible. WWE 2K18 gave us the ability to have up to 8 men in a match at one time, but for some reason, it didn't give us the ability to have triple threat tag team or fatal 4-way tag team matches. WWE 2K19 gave us that feature, but 2K18 didn't have that. Well, with WWE 2K18 Plus, you not only can have those types of matches simply by rearranging the teams, but you can also have handicap combinations you've probably never even seen on TV, as long as it only uses a total of 8 guys. 7-on-1 handicap match? 6-on-2? Or how about 4 versus 2 versus 1 versus 1? It's all possible if you use the Plus mod to rearrange the teams. And the best part is, that's only taking into account the rearranging of the teams. That's only one feature that Plus mods have. So if that amount of flexibility and customization is available when 2K isn't actively supporting the modding community, imagine the power of human imagination if 2K not only permits mods, but actively gives us the tools needed to make modding our games as easy as possible. I'm taking a long time to explain my desire for full mod support, but that's only because the importance of having mods in your game cannot be overstated. However, there is one thing I must caution you against. Mod support does not excuse the developers from releasing crappy games. Bethesda RPGs do not have such an active modding community simply because of their construction sets and creation kits. That is certainly a contributing factor, but it is also because they make games that are incredible even without the mods. In order to have the active modding community I speak of, the games still need to be good enough on their own merit that there are enough people who care about the games that they can actually support an active modding community. That's why Super Mario World for the SNES has an active, sprawling ROM hack community, while Shaq Fu, doesn't. At least for me, personally, this is one of the biggest examples of rule of thumb number 3 in this entire series. Please bear in mind that wrestling is predetermined. It's fake. The whole reason wrestling still exists when we have real fights like UFC is because wrestling seeks to tell a story, and in doing so, creates a clear difference in the product. In WWE games, the outcomes of matches are not predetermined. However, good wrestling games should nevertheless seek to tell a story as a primary part of their gameplay. This is something that you are slowly starting to realize with the My Career modes of WWE 2K18 and 2K19, but it needs work. The Story Designer mode was introduced in WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 and was a staple feature in WWE games for 5 years straight. However, its last appearance was in WWE 2K14 and was removed without explanation from WWE 2K15 onwards. Now, maybe the 2K15 removal had the excuse that it was a new console generation and the developers needed some time to get used to the new hardware and the new engine, and by the time that happened, they had very little time left to actually program content for the game. To that I say, you've had 5 years to get your act together, 2K. You're out of excuses. Remember rule of thumb number 3. Never remove. There is literally no reason not to have a story designer in WWE 2K20. The only excuse I can even think of is the man hours it would take to code the mode all over again. But again, you could just copy and paste the code from WWE 2K14 and simply give us a new spitshine on the graphics. At the very least, can you at least give me the ability to write my own custom promos? We'll talk about promos in part 3 of this series, but for the time being, why not give me the ability to insert my own text into these text boxes, to give my wrestler the ability to have them say whatever I want them to say. Also, give me the ability to watch my videos in full screen after I've created them. I don't simply mean the preview option from WWE 2K18 either. That preview feature had an obtrusive press B to cancel instruction in the bottom left corner of the screen, and I want that gone, please. Last but not least, every cutscene in the game should be available for use in Create a Video. Being interviewed backstage by Renee, being interviewed backstage but getting jumped by an opponent, being interviewed backstage but a rival shows up on Renee's other side to interrupt your interview? These are all cutscenes that are in the game, so why can't I use them when creating my own videos? Because 2K didn't program it in, that's why. Remember rule of thumb number 2. In addition, I would like to see the ability to have intergender cutscenes as long as no punches are being thrown. I understand why you don't want to have any male-on-female violence in your games, but for just two people standing next to each other and talking, there is no need for such a restriction. This will, of course, require that you disable the brawl feature during any promos, but that shouldn't be a problem, should it? Speaking of the ability to create my own cutscenes, I would like a lot more freedom to create my wrestler's custom entrance. You know, it is simply baffling to me how, ever since WrestleMania 2000 on the N64, you have made very little progress in actually giving us the ability to customize our own entrances. WrestleMania 2000 was the earliest game, to my knowledge, that not only had full entrances, but also had the ability to customize each stage of the entrance, giving you the ability to select different animations for being on the stage, on the ramp, entering the ring, and being in the ring. Gee, does that sound familiar? The PS2 era gave us the ability to add custom pyro to our entrances, and quite honestly, that is literally the last time wrestling games did anything of note to improve our ability to customize entrances. For at least an entire console generation, one that spans 8 whole years, custom entrances have been literally exactly the same. So how would I like to see custom entrances done even better? Well, for starters, let me use literally any taunt in the game for my entrances. The game can render these taunts while I'm on the stage, and I know this because if I'm in a match, I can walk over to the stage of the arena and do the taunt then. So it's not a problem of the game being unable to render the animations in that location, it's a problem of 2K just not giving us the option. The only time it would make sense to restrict me is if my taunt requires I utilize certain parts of the ring. For example, taunts that require I be on the apron will of course only be available during the stage in my entrance when I'm standing on the apron, and taunts that have me using the turnbuckles would of course require I already be in the ring. But aside from that, let me do anything that the game is physically capable of rendering. In fact, let me do multiple taunts per entrance section. For example, if I'm already in the ring, I could do this taunt right here, where I stand on the middle turnbuckle and raise my arms in the air, and then I could go and do that for all 4 corners. I've just created a facsimile of Steve Austin's entrance. Granted, Steve Austin's entrance is already in the game, but the customization is what's important. The only drawback I can see to multiple taunts per section is that when I'm playing online, I could potentially troll my opponents by having exceedingly long entrances. To that, I say, give me a time limit such as 1 minute to complete my entrance. Other than that, let me do whatever the hell I want. In addition, we need the ability to customize different stages of tag team and trio entrances. There is no reason why in 2018 we can only adopt an entire tag team or trio entrance verbatim and can't break it up into different sections. Hell, give us the ability to have each wrestler do a different singles entrance, but they're happening simultaneously. Simply have the singles entrances be slightly off-center so the entrances can happen side by side with each other. Also, since WWE 2K18 gave us the ability to have up to 4 men on a team, we need 4-man entrances. In addition, we need more options for entrance animations. We need more intergender entrances, as well as more entrances for guys with managers, instead of them just doing their singles entrance with a manager standing in the background. All in all, just remember rule of thumb number 1, as well as rule of thumb number 2. More customizations with our entrances, with only enough restrictions to keep everything during multiplayer nice and fair. This is a niche category for me, but it's definitely something I feel is worth mentioning. As I said at the beginning of this video, I often dream of having my own wrestling promotion, and the Creation Suite enables me to live that dream vicariously through the games. So imagine if I'm creating a world championship for my promotion. I want to name it the Ultimate Championship, since I think that sounds like a cool name for a world title. Well, guess what? I can't do that. The word Ultimate does not appear when being given the option to name my custom championship. Why? The word Ultimate is an option for my wrestlers' nicknames, so the voice file from the ring announcer is definitely in the game. So why can't I select that option when naming my title? Also, let us use individual letters as part of the title's name so we can use the initials of our promotion as the title's name. Remember rule of thumb number 2. While we're on the topic, I would like greater opportunities to set parameters for my custom titles. For example, instead of simply restricting the title to cruiserweights, let me choose which weight classes are allowed to challenge for the title. Let me make it so that cruiserweights and super heavyweights can challenge for the belt, but heavyweights and light heavyweights can't, if that's your thing. I can't think of a single reason why you would want to create a title like that, but again, rule of thumb number 2, don't restrict us unless you have a good reason to. Also, let us choose a special type of stipulation that a title must be contested for, like how the old Hardcore Championship had to be contested under Hardcore rules, or how the old WCW television title was always contested under a strict 15-minute time limit, or how, for a brief time, the TNA X Division title always had to be contested in triple threat matches. Let us pick a type of match, including custom matches, under which a custom title has to be contested. As for our custom wrestlers, I would greatly appreciate it if you returned to the old WWE 2K14 style of choosing 10 words in any combination to be our wrestler's name. Remember rule of thumb number 3. If it was in a game previously, don't take it out unless you have a good reason to. Unfortunately, I don't have time today to discuss everything I want to talk about. So tune in next week when I'll discuss the ideal ways to handle my career and universe modes. I will also discuss what a lot of fans have been requesting for years now, the return of GM mode. For the time being, however, if you enjoyed my little rant, be sure to like this video and share with your friends, and be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analysis and discussion of your favorite video games. Also, check out some of my other in-depth discussion videos, as well as some of my Let's Plays where I take a more lighthearted approach to these games and just have a good time. In the meantime, however, I am Acer Thorn, and I will see you guys later.